This is it. Welcome to Flying Legends 2011. Separation. Going to the left, the good guys. Going to the right, the bad guys. Hey. Or, well, depending from where you're coming, and I'm thinking about Simon, who comes from Germany and who's there.
Oh, it's the Spanish guys who've gone to the right.
Oh, the Spanish. Yeah. You make things complicated. Anyway.
No, they're the bad guys for today. Well,
they got the black crosses, the black crosses on the fuselage and tails, and their pilots were.
Oh, that's nice. That's the first time that's happened here since 1968.
John Romain, who flies one now, recently wrote a story about that.
Of course, interestingly enough, the prototype, the very early one, flew with a Rolls-Royce Kestrel. And after the war, we have 4 Kestrels lined up there. We'll hear them later.
We'll hear them. And strange sound.
After the war, the Spanish ones were built with Rolls-Royce Merlins, taking the story full circle.
So it's a very small aircraft. You can look at the fuselage. It's quite slim and long. Griffin.
2 Griffin Spitfires coming in too.
The aircraft stays the same. The Griffins from the left.
Teardrop canopy modification was a suggestion from Geoffrey Quill, who had flown Spitfires. He took leave from his job as test pilot to go back into the RAF during the Battle of Britain. He realised that you needed to do something about the visibility behind in the Spitfire.
But just look at this aircraft. Look at the way the fuselage tapers to the tail. It has the same elegance as you can find in some birds. The funny thing is that it's one of the strongest airframes ever built. Well, was born different. Men and machines together. This aircraft, and he knew it was terminal, and this was during the mid-30s, and he designed this aircraft probably not in a frenzy, but he was inspired, and it's very strange to think that this aircraft has the fastest wing available in any piston engine aircraft in history. I think it was Squadron Leader Martin Dale who pushed one to, near sonic speeds.
0.96.
96% of the speed of sound.
He did lose the propeller.
Yeah, he lost the propeller and the reduction gear and everything, and probably 90 pounds of metal flew off from the aircraft, they call it.
Now in front of us we have two Mark 5s, a Mark 9 and a Mark 16.
Pete Kinsey is flying the Bearcat. Pete Kinsey is the chief pilot for the fighter collection based here in Duxford, who's the driving force behind Flying Legends. And Pete is also the flight director for this air show. In fact, when it appeared, this small fighter arrived when the trend was... Mustang, here it comes, the P-51, the Cadillac of the skies. Having flown one for the Empire of the Sun, that magnificent movie by Steven Spielberg, you know, when the kid sees P-51s strafing and going like hell, and he jumps up and shouts, the P-51, the Cadillac of the skies. Well, when you fly one, you know it's really more than a nickname. It's a Cadillac of the skies. When a Spitfire or a Hurricane is a war machine, a tiny little cubicle into which you
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to point out that I haven't flown a Mustang.
There in one. So this was designed by a German engineer called Mr. Schmid, Edgar Schmid. But then he had the help of a Hungarian genius in aerodynamics, Professor von Karman, who was at the time heading the California Institute of Technology Aerodynamics Department, and who invented the laminar flow wing. Listen. While during the war, they were loading them up.
There goes one now.
But of course, today's Mustangs are flown very conservatively and very carefully. And for instance,
Being flanked there with Rob Davis and Alistair Kay in the P-51s. And of course this particular aeroplane, Sally B, we were talking earlier, is operated as a flying memorial to the, is it 17,000 air crew that didn't make it, the ones that were shot down, all of whom of course were volunteers. So, oh, 70,000 casualties.
this part of England during World War II was something could be described as a big, huge aerodrome covered with herds of P-70s.
And of course the most famous documentary of the time, the original Memphis Belle made by William Wyler, was filmed just a few miles away at Bassingbourn.
In each one of those, you had 10
It
kids.
was known as the Dominie. This, I believe, is a Dominie, a military one.
Yeah.
They differed really only by having a radio operator's position behind the cockpit.
It's a kind of a 1924 Bentley, or 26 maybe. It's comfortable, it's purring. Inside it's very smooth, when the weather is nice, of course. Look at the wings, pointed wings, and look at the tails. They resemble the wings of a dragonfly. Why? Because Geoffrey de Havilland, the master, was he was really a world-class expert in insects and little moths. Now comes something else. 1934, 1935, and you're somebody who wants to travel. And instead of taking today's Airbuses or Boeing, this is what would take you sometimes around the world or very far. A reverence to Geoffrey de Havilland, his sons, the de Havilland Company. This is a trio of dragons.
Well, we have a Dragon Rapide and 2 Dragons. I was talking to Henry Lebaucher, who was flying one of the Dragons. He said they put an awful lot of effort into designing an aeroplane with 4 ailerons that do absolutely nothing. He said, you move the stick around and it makes absolutely no difference. The aeroplane was designed...
Was in fact the direct ancestor of Lufthansa. Its name was Delag.
Well, as always, a magnificent sight when it arrives at an air show.
Somebody who's not British. There's a bit of jealousy, of envy, because keeping such things alive, and not only in museums, is really fitting. Superb airplane.
The Lancaster, of course, was born out of failure. It replaced the Manchester, the Avro Manchester, that was powered by two Rolls-Royce Vulture engines that were so problematic. They kept failing. Unfortunately, if one failed, the other one could only be guaranteed to get you to the scene of the crash. So consequently, the only Vultures that still survive are all crash damaged, having been dug out of the ground in various places. The decision was made to enlarge the wingspan, making it impossible to get into the hangars at the time, but to hang on 4 Merlins. Once again, these were borrowed from the Beaufighter production line, and the aircraft was incredibly transformed into one of the great aircraft of all time.
Once again, think about 20 years old kids. Most of them had never driven a car. Some of them had rode on a motorbike. But then suddenly, after only a few months of training, well, roughly a year,